The wedding invitation landed on Kwame's desk like a grenade wrapped in gold foil. He stared at the embossed letters, his hands trembling as he read the names printed in elegant script. Akosua Mensah and Richard Osei cordially invite you to celebrate their union. The same Akosua who had walked out of his one-room apartment in Nima 3 years ago, telling him she couldn't waste her prime years on a man who sold second-hand phones from a wooden table at Makola Market. What would you do if your ex who abandoned you invited you to her wedding? Hit like if you've ever been left behind and comment below where you're watching from. Kwame's office, the entire 20th floor of the gleaming glass tower in Accra's airport city, seemed to close in around him. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the sprawling city below. The same city where he'd once struggled to afford Trotro fare. Now at 32, he owned the building. His tech company, Connect Ghana, had exploded in the past 2 years, making him one of the youngest millionaires in West Africa. His assistant Amma knocked softly before entering. "Mr. Asante, your 3 o'clock is here. The investors from—" She stopped when she saw his face. "Are you all right, boss?" Kwame couldn't answer. His mind had traveled back 3 years to that humid August evening when everything fell apart. They'd been together for 4 years. Akosua had been a nursing student at the University of Ghana when they met. He was hustling, repairing phones, dreaming of starting his own business. She'd believed in him then, or so he thought. They'd shared kenki and fried fish on their dates because that's all he could afford. She'd laughed at his jokes in their cramped room in Nima, where the landlord banged on the door every month demanding rent. But dreams don't pay bills. That's what Akosua's mother had told her. That's what her friends whispered when they saw her with a man whose shoes had holes in them. The breaking point came on a Friday evening. Kwame had come home excited, clutching a business proposal he'd been working on for months. He'd finally secured a meeting with a potential investor. A small chance, but a chance nonetheless. Akosua was packing. 2 suitcases lay open on their shared mattress on the floor. Her clothes, her shoes, her dreams of a better life, all being folded away from him. "Akosua, what's happening?" She didn't look at him. "I'm leaving, Kwame." "Leaving? To where? What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm done. I'm done waiting for you to become something. I'm done eating gari and groundnuts for dinner. I'm done pretending that love is enough when my mates are getting married to men with cars and real jobs." Kwame's world tilted. "But the investor meeting, I told you things are about to change." "That's what you always say." Akosua finally turned to face him, and he saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Contempt. "It's always next month, next year, when this deal goes through." "I'm 26 years old, Kwame. I want children. I want a home. I want a life, not promises." "So you're just going to abandon everything we built?" "What did we build?" She gestured around the tiny room with its peeling paint and shared bathroom down the hall. "This? 4 years, and this is all you have to show for it." "My mother was right. You're never going to be anything." The words cut deeper than any knife. Kwame had stood there frozen as she zipped up her suitcases and called a taxi with money he suspected came from someone else. "There's someone else, isn't there?" he'd asked quietly. Akosua paused at the door. For a moment he thought she might deny it. Instead she said, "His name is Richard. He's a banker. He has a house in East Legon and drives a Range Rover. He can give me the life I deserve." "And I can't?" "No, Kwame, you can't. You're a good man, but good doesn't pay school fees. Good doesn't buy land. Good doesn't secure a future." She opened the door. "I'm sorry, but I have to choose myself." And she left, just like that. 4 years dissolved in one evening. Now, holding this wedding invitation, Kwame felt that old wound tear open. But beneath the pain was something else, something cold and calculating. "Sir?" Amma was still standing there, concerned. Kwame looked up at her, then at the invitation, then back at the window overlooking the city he'd conquered despite everyone's doubts. "Amma, clear my schedule for the wedding date." "Sir?" "I'm going to a wedding." A smile played at his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "And I think it's time Akosua learned what she walked away from." As Amma left, Kwame pulled out his phone and made a call to his lawyer. If Akosua wanted to see what he'd become, he'd show her. But he'd also show her what it cost to underestimate a man with nothing to lose. What he didn't know was that Richard Osei, Akosua's wealthy fiancé, was hiding secrets that would make Kwame's revenge plans look like child's play. What do you think Kwame should do? Should he go to the wedding or move on? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you're loving this story so far, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next when Kwame shows up at that wedding. Share this with someone who loves a good revenge story. The Mercedes-Benz S-Class glided through Accra's traffic like a shark through water. Kwame sat in the back seat, adjusting his custom-tailored Tom Ford suit, midnight blue with subtle pinstripes that cost more than 3 months of his old rent. His Patek Philippe watch caught the afternoon sunlight as they passed by Makola Market, where he'd once sold phones from a wooden table. 3 weeks had passed since the invitation arrived. 3 weeks of careful planning. "We're approaching the venue, sir," his driver, Kofi, announced as they turned onto a tree-lined street in East Legon, Accra's most exclusive neighborhood. The wedding was being held at the Royal Senchi Resort, but the pre-wedding cocktail party, the one Kwame had strategically chosen to attend, was at Richard's family mansion, a sprawling compound with manicured lawns, a fountain, and cars that cost more than most Ghanaians earned in a lifetime. Kwame had done his research. Richard Osei came from old money. His grandfather had been a cocoa merchant who'd made strategic investments during Ghana's independence. Richard himself was a senior executive at Stanbic Bank, drove a Range Rover Sport, and belonged to the Akimoto Golf Club. On paper, he was everything Kwame hadn't been 3 years ago. But paper could be deceiving. As Kofi opened the car door, Kwame stepped out onto the cobblestone driveway. Heads turned immediately. The guests, mostly Accra's elite in their expensive kente and designer agbada, whispered among themselves. Some recognized him from business magazines. Others were simply drawn to the quiet confidence he radiated. "Kwame Asante," a voice called out. "I almost didn't believe it when I saw your RSVP." Kwame turned to see Ya Boteng, an old classmate from secondary school who now worked in finance. They shook hands, and Ya's grip was slightly too tight, his smile slightly too wide. "You've done well for yourself," Ya said, eyes scanning Kwame's expensive attire. "Connect Ghana is the talk of every boardroom in West Africa. 5 million users in 2 years? 6 million as of last week," Kwame corrected smoothly. "But who's counting? And you're here for Akosua's wedding." Ya's tone suggested he knew the history. In Ghana, everybody knew everybody's business, especially in their social circles. "That's bold." "I was invited," Kwame replied, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. "Would be rude not to attend." "Kwame," the voice froze him. He turned slowly, and there she was. Akosua looked different. Her hair was in long Brazilian weave instead of the simple braids she used to wear. Her dress was designer, probably Gucci or Valentino, and jewelry sparkled at her neck and wrists. She'd gained weight in the way that prosperity brings, her face fuller, her presence more assured. But her eyes, those same eyes that had looked at him with contempt 3 years ago, now showed something else entirely. Shock, confusion. And if Kwame wasn't mistaken, regret. "Akosua," he smiled, noting how her hand trembled slightly around her own champagne glass. "Congratulations on your upcoming wedding. Thank you for the invitation. I didn't think you'd actually come." Her voice was smaller than he remembered. Behind her, a group of women, probably her bridesmaids, watched with open curiosity. "Why wouldn't I? We were friends once." The word friends hung in the air like an insult. "Besides, I wanted to wish you well. Richard seems like a good man." "He is," Akosua said quickly, defensively. "He's very good to me." "I'm sure he is. A Range Rover and a house in East Legon can be very good to anyone." Akosua's face flushed. "Kwame, that's not fair." "Fair?" Kwame's smile didn't waver, but his voice dropped lower. "You're right. Let's not talk about fair at your engagement party. Where is the lucky man, anyway? I'd love to meet him properly." "He's inside, handling some business calls. The bank, you know how it is." "Oh, I know exactly how it is." Kwame sipped his champagne. "Though I'm surprised he's working on his engagement party day. When you love someone, You make time. Before Akosua could respond, a commotion erupted near the mansion's entrance. A woman's voice, sharp and angry, cut through the garden party's polite chatter. Where is he? Where is Richard? The crowd parted and a woman stormed through, mid-30s, beautiful but disheveled, holding a baby that couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Her eyes were wild with fury and desperation. Richard O.C., she screamed toward the mansion. Come out here and face your son. The garden fell silent. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Kwame watched Akosua's face drain of color, watched her champagne glass slip from her fingers and shatter on the stone pathway. Who is that? Someone whispered. Is that baby? Oh my God, did she just say? Richard emerged from the mansion, his face a mask of panic poorly disguised as confusion. He was tall, light-skinned, with the kind of soft features that came from a life without hardship. Abina, what are you doing here? We talked about this. Talked? The woman, Abina, laughed bitterly, tears streaming down her face. You mean when you promised to marry me? When you said you'd leave your family's arranged marriage plans and we'd raise our son together? Or do you mean last week when you sent your lawyer to offer me money to disappear? The baby started crying. The sound seemed to wake everyone from their shock. Guests pulled out phones, some recording, others texting frantically. In Ghana's high society, scandal spread faster than Harmattan winds. Kwame remained perfectly still, watching the scene unfold. This was better than anything he could have planned. He glanced at Akosua, who stood frozen, her expensive dress suddenly looking like a costume, her carefully constructed new life crumbling around her. Akosua, Richard started, moving toward his fiancée. This is just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Abena shifted the baby to her other hip. I have text messages, bank transfers, photos of us together last month. Your son has your eyes, Richard. Everyone here can see it. Richard's mother rushed out of the mansion, her face contorted with rage, but not at her son. Security. Remove this woman from my property immediately. I'm not going anywhere until everyone knows the truth, Abena shouted. Until she knows. She pointed at Akosua. That man you're about to marry, he's been with me for 2 years. Our son's name is Kofi Richard Osei, and he's 6 months old. Do the math, sister. He was sleeping with both of us. Akosha made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. She looked at Richard, searching his face for denial, for explanation, for anything that would make this nightmare untrue. Richard's silence was answer enough. You knew, Akosua whispered. You knew, and you were going to marry me anyway. Baby, listen. Richard reached for her, but she stumbled backward, her designer heels catching on the broken champagne glass. Kwame moved without thinking, catching Akosua before she fell. For a moment, they were close enough that he could smell her perfume. Expensive now, not the cheap body spray she used to wear. Her eyes met his, and in them he saw the same fear and betrayal he'd felt 3 years ago. Careful, he said softly. Wouldn't want you to hurt yourself over a man who doesn't deserve you. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Security guards were escorting Abena away, but the damage was done. Guests were leaving in clusters, their phones already lighting up with calls and messages. The society wedding of the year had become the scandal of the decade. Kwame gently released Akosua and stepped back. I should go. This seems like a family matter. He straightened his suit jacket. But Akosua, that life you thought you deserved, the one with the Range Rover and the big house? Be careful what you wish for. Sometimes the package isn't what it appears to be. He started toward his car, then paused and turned back. Oh, and if you ever need anything, a lawyer perhaps, or just someone who remembers when you were real instead of polished, you have my number. I'm sure it's the same one you blocked 3 years ago. As his Mercedes pulled away from the chaos, Kwame's phone rang. His lawyer. I saw the videos already, Kwame answered. Social media works fast. This isn't about that, his lawyer said. It's about the investigation you asked me to run on Richard Osei. You need to see what we found. He's not just a cheater, Kwame. He's a criminal. Kwame's grip tightened on the phone. Send me everything. As Accra's skyline came into view, Kwame realized that his revenge had just taken an unexpected turn. He'd come to show Akosua what she'd lost. Instead, he might be the only person who could save her from what she'd found. What would you do in Okosua's position? Stay and fight or run away? Drop your thoughts below. And if you think Kwame should help his ex or leave her to face the consequences, comment your opinion. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Tales by Olal for more dramatic stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The rain hammered against Kwame's office windows 2 days after the disastrous engagement party. Accra's rainy season had arrived with a vengeance, flooding streets and trapping people in their homes, but not trapping secrets. Those continued to flow freely across social media, in WhatsApp groups, and through the city's efficient gossip network. Kwame sat behind his mahogany desk, reviewing the files his lawyer had compiled on Richard Ossie. Each page revealed another layer of corruption: fraudulent loan approvals, embezzlement from the bank, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Richard had been stealing for years, hiding behind his family name and his position at Stanbic Bank. The Bank of Ghana is launching an investigation, his lawyer, Ni Arma, had explained during their morning meeting. Richard's been approving loans to shell companies he controls, then defaulting on them. We're talking about 20 million cedis, maybe more. 20 million cedis, nearly $4 million. All stolen while Richard played the respectable banker, the eligible bachelor, the man with the Range Rover and the mansion. A knock interrupted Kwame's thoughts. Amma entered, her expression uncertain. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." "Who?" "Akosua Mensah." Kwame's chest tightened. He'd wondered if she would come, wondered if pride would keep her away, or desperation would bring her to his door. "Send her in." Akosua entered like a woman walking through a dream, or a nightmare. She wore simple jeans and a loose blouse, no makeup, her expensive weave pulled back in a ponytail. Without the designer clothes and jewelry, she looked younger, more like the nursing student he'd fallen in love with years ago. "Thank you for seeing me," she said quietly, standing awkwardly near the door as if unsure whether she had permission to enter fully. Kwame gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit. Would you like water? Coffee?" "Water, please." Her voice was hoarse, as if she'd been crying. Probably had been. He poured water from the bottle on his desk, noting how her hands shook when she accepted the glass. They sat in silence for a moment, the rain providing a soundtrack to their discomfort. "Your office is beautiful," Akosua finally said, looking around at the modern furniture, the awards on the walls, the view of Airport City's skyline. "You've done well, Kwame. Better than anyone imagined." "Better than you imagined, you mean?" She flinched but didn't deny it. "Yes, better than I imagined." "Why are you here, Akosua?" She took a shaky breath. "The wedding is canceled, obviously. Richard's family is trying to contain the scandal, but it's everywhere. My mother won't answer my calls. My friends," she laughed bitterly, "my friends have disappeared faster than morning mist. Turns out they were Richard's friends, attracted to his money and status. Without that, I'm nobody to them." "So you came to me? The man you called nothing 3 years ago?" "I didn't call you nothing. You said I would never be anything," Kwame interrupted, his voice sharp. "You said good doesn't pay school fees, doesn't buy land, doesn't secure a future. Those were your exact words, Akosua. I remember them perfectly because they played in my head every single day while I was building my company." Tears spilled down her cheeks. I know what I said, and I was wrong, so wrong. But Kwame, I need help. Richard is dangerous." Kwame leaned forward, interested despite himself. "Dangerous how?" "Yesterday, 2 men came to my apartment, the one Richard was renting for me in Cantonments. They said Richard owes people money, bad people. They said if he can't pay, his assets will be collected, including me." "Including you?" "They knew things, Kwame. Things only Richard would know. Where I work, my mother's address in Koforidua, my routines. They said I was Richard's property now, and they'd come to claim what he owed." She was shaking visibly. "They gave me 3 days to convince Richard to pay up. Or else." Kwame's jaw tightened. "Or else what?" "They didn't specify. They didn't need to. The way they looked at me." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I went to the police. They took a report, But they said without evidence of a direct threat, there's nothing they can do. They suggested I leave Accra for a while. And Richard? What does he say? Richard won't answer my calls. His family's lawyers sent me a letter this morning. She pulled a crumpled envelope from her purse. They're denying any relationship between us. They say I was just an acquaintance, that I'm lying to extort money from them, and if I speak publicly about Richard, they'll sue me for defamation. Kwame took the letter, scanning its legal jargon and threats. The Osei family lawyers were expensive and vicious. They would destroy Akosua if she fought back, and she had no resources to defend herself. That baby, Abena's son, Kwame said. Richard didn't deny it at the party. He's denying it now. His family is claiming Abena is a gold digger who targeted their son. They're offering her money to recant her story and disappear. I heard she took it. 500,000 cedis. Enough to relocate somewhere and start over. Smart woman. But that leaves me with nothing, Akosua said desperately. No wedding, no home. Richard already evicted me from the cantonment's apartment. My nursing license expired last year because I stopped working when Richard said he'd take care of me. I have no job, no savings of my own, and dangerous men threatening me over debts I didn't create. She looked at Kwame with red-rimmed eyes. I know I have no right to ask you for anything after what I did. I know I hurt you, abandoned you when you needed me, chose money over love. But Kwame, I'm scared. Those men meant what they said, and I have nowhere else to turn. Kwame stood and walked to the window, his back to her. Part of him wanted to tell her to leave, to face the consequences of choosing Richard's money over Kwame's love. She'd made her bed with a criminal, let her lie in it, but another part of him, the part that remembered how she used to laugh at his terrible jokes, how she'd held him when his mother died, how she'd been his first love and his biggest heartbreak. That part couldn't watch her be destroyed by Richard's mistakes. What exactly do you want from me? He asked without turning around. Help? Protection? Maybe a job. I can start over, retrain as a nurse, work hard. I just need time and safety to rebuild my life. The way I had to rebuild mine when you left? Silence. Then quietly, yes, exactly like that. And I know I don't deserve your help. I know karma has come for me, and maybe this is what I earned. But Kwame, whatever you think of me, please don't let those men hurt me. Please. Kwame turned to face her. She looked small in the large leather chair, vulnerable in a way he'd never seen during their relationship. Back then, she'd been the strong one, the practical one, pushing him to work harder, earn more, be more. Now she was broken, and he had the power to help or hurt her. I'll help you, he said finally, but on conditions. Hope flared in her eyes. Anything. First, you'll work for it. I have a community outreach program through Connect Ghana. We provide technology training to rural schools. You'll help coordinate the health and safety component. It's real work with a real salary, not charity. Yes, absolutely. Second, he continued, you'll tell me everything about Richard, his friends, his business dealings, places he frequents, people he owes money to. Everything. Akosua hesitated. Why? What are you going to do? That's not your concern. Do you agree or not? She nodded slowly. I agree. And third, Kwame moved closer, his voice dropping. You'll be honest with me. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more playing games. If you're in my life again, even just as an employee, I need to trust that you won't stab me in the back the moment someone richer comes along. Kwame, I swear. Don't swear, just do it. Prove it through your actions, not your words. Words are cheap, Akosua. You taught me that. She stood, extending her hand formally. Thank you, I won't let you down. He shook her hand, professional and distant. We'll see. Amma will get you set up with HR and security. I'm assigning a driver to you for the next few weeks. Someone who knows how to handle problems. If those men come back, you call me immediately. Understood? Understood. As she turned to leave, Kwame added, Akosua, one more thing. She looked back. I'm not doing this because I still love you. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. Don't confuse the two. Pain flickered across her face, but she nodded. I won't. And Kwame? For what it's worth, I am sorry. Truly sorry. Not just because I need you now, but because I was wrong about you. Wrong about everything. After she left, Kwame returned to his desk and opened the file on Richard Osei. If he was going to protect Akoshua, he needed to understand exactly what kind of enemy Richard had become. His phone rang. Ni Arma, his lawyer. The Bank of Ghana moved faster than expected, Ni said. They're arresting Richard tomorrow morning. But Kwame, there's something else. The men threatening Akosua, they're not just loan sharks. They're connected to a Nigerian syndicate that's been using Richard to launder money through the bank. If they think Akosua knows anything about their operations, she's in more danger than she realizes, Kwame finished. Exactly. And now that you're involved, you might be too. Kwame looked out at the rain-soaked city, at the empire he'd built from nothing. 3 years ago, he'd had nothing to lose. Now he had everything, and he was risking it for a woman who'd once thrown him away like trash. But that was the difference between him and Richard, between him and Akosua as she used to be. Kwame had learned that wealth without character was just money, and character meant doing the right thing even when it cost you everything. Then we better move fast, Kwame said. Send me everything you have on the Nigerian syndicate. If they want a war, they'll get one. Outside his office, thunder cracked across the Accra skyline. The storm was only beginning. Do you think Kwame is making a mistake helping his ex? Or is he proving he's the bigger person? Drop your opinion in the comments. And if you're wondering what the Nigerian syndicate will do next, make sure you're subscribed to Tales by Ola with notifications turned on. Chapter 4 is going to blow your mind. Share this story with someone who loves intense African drama. The arrest of Richard Osei made headlines across Ghana. By dawn, camera crews surrounded his family's East Legon mansion, while police officers in riot gear led him out in handcuffs. His mother screamed at the cameras about persecution and family honor. His father, a retired Supreme Court judge, remained silent, his face a mask of shame. Kwame watched the news from his home gym, running on the treadmill in his Trisaco Valley estate, the same exclusive neighborhood where Ghana's president and foreign ambassadors lived. The irony wasn't lost on him. 3 years ago, he couldn't afford rent in Nima. Now he lived where Range Rovers were the cheapest cars on the street. His phone buzzed. Akosua's name flashed on the screen, the number he'd unblocked yesterday after she'd entered his life again. They came back, she said without greeting, her voice tight with fear. The men. They're outside my sister's house in Dansaman. I'm hiding in the bathroom. Kwame, they have guns. Kwame immediately stopped the treadmill. Stay where you are. Don't open any doors. I'm sending help. He made 3 calls in rapid succession. First to Sergeant Mensah, a retired military officer who now ran security for Connect Ghana. Second to his lawyer, Ni Arma. Third to someone he'd hoped never to contact, his cousin Kojo, who'd spent years in Nigeria working in private security and knew how the syndicates operated. 20 minutes later, Kwame's convoy of 2 SUVs pulled up to a modest compound in Dansaman, one of Accra's middle-class neighborhoods. 2 men loitered near a black Toyota Camry with Nigerian plates, pretending to talk on their phones while watching the house. They wore expensive watches and gold chains, the uniform of enforcers who wanted to be noticed. Sergeant Mensah, a barrel-chested man with scars on his forearms, approached them directly. This is private property. You need to leave. The taller enforcer, with tribal marks on his cheeks that identified him as Yoruba, smiled without warmth. We're just visiting friends. Free country, isn't it? Not when you're threatening women? Kwame emerged from his vehicle, flanked by 2 more security personnel. Especially women under my protection. The Yoruba man's eyes narrowed. Kwame Asante, the phone boy who got lucky. We know who you are. Then you know I'm not someone you want problems with. Kwame's voice was calm but carried steel underneath. Whatever Richard owes you, take it up with him. The woman has nothing to do with his business. The woman was going to be his wife, the second enforcer said, his accent thick with Nigerian pidgin English. That makes her collateral. Our boss doesn't like losing money. Your boss is Chukwudi Okafor, Kwame said, using the information Kojo had provided. Lagos-based, runs money laundering operations through West African banks. Richard was one of his pawns, but I'm offering you something better. The enforcers exchanged glances. Better how? Richard stole from his bank and from your boss. I have information on where he hid some of the money. Accounts, properties, assets his family doesn't know about. Information worth more than threatening a woman who has nothing. And why would you help us? Because I don't help criminals, Kwame said, but I also don't let innocent people get hurt. You get what you came for, you leave Akashua alone, and everyone goes home alive. That's the deal. The Yoruba man pulled out his phone, stepped away to make a call. When he returned, his expression was unreadable. Our boss wants to meet you. Tonight, he's in Accra on business. Tell him I'll meet him at the Labadi Beach Hotel. Public place, 7 p.m. Come alone or don't come at all. After the enforcers drove away, Kwame retrieved Akosua from her sister's house. She emerged shaking, her sister Ifua hovering protectively beside her. You can't stay here anymore, Kwame told them both. They know this address. Akosua, pack what you need. You're staying at one of my properties until this is resolved. I can't impose. It's not an imposition. It's survival. He turned to Efua. You and your family should visit relatives upcountry for a few weeks. Once these people mark a location, they don't forget. Efua's husband, a school teacher named Kofi, nodded grimly. We'll leave today. Akosua, go with him. He's trying to help you. An hour later, Kwame installed Akosua in a serviced apartment in cantonments, secure, modern, with 24-hour security. It was smaller than the place Richard had rented for her, but safer. Why are you doing this? Akosua asked as Kwame's security team swept the apartment for bugs or tracking devices. You could just pay them off and be done with me. Because paying them off doesn't solve the problem, Kwame replied, checking the window locks personally. It just delays it. These people need to understand that threatening you has consequences. But meeting with them? Kwame, they're dangerous criminals. What if they hurt you? He looked at her directly. 3 years ago, I had nothing. No money, no power, no way to protect myself or the people I loved. That powerlessness nearly destroyed me when you left. I swore I'd never be powerless again. So no, Akosua, I'm not afraid of them. They should be afraid of me. The certainty in his voice sent a chill through her, not of fear, but of recognition. This wasn't the struggling phone seller she'd abandoned. This was someone who'd learned to navigate Ghana's complex power structures, someone who understood that wealth meant nothing without the will to use it. There's something I need to tell you, Akosha said as Kwame prepared to leave, about Richard and the money he stole. What about it? Some of it is still in an account I had access to. Richard put my name on it months ago, said it was for wedding expenses. I never used it. The account made me uncomfortable, all that money from nowhere. But it's still active, almost 3 million cedis. Kwame went very still. You have access to 3 million cedis of stolen money? I didn't know it was stolen, not until the arrest. But yes, the account is partially in my name. The bank hasn't frozen it yet because it's structured as a personal account, not a business one. Where's the documentation? She retrieved a folder from her bag, account statements, passwords, everything needed to access the money. Kwame flipped through the pages, his mind racing. This changes things, he said slowly. This gives us leverage. What do you mean? The Nigerian syndicate wants their money back. Richard's family will fight to protect their assets. The bank wants to recover what was stolen. But you, he held up the documents. You have something everyone wants and nobody knows about yet. Kwame, I don't want anything to do with that money. It's dirty. Maybe. But it's also power, and right now we need power to keep you alive. He pocketed the documents. Don't mention this account to anyone. Not the police, not the lawyers, not even your family. Understood? She nodded, though uncertainty clouded her eyes. At 6:45 p.m., Kwame arrived at the Labadi Beach Hotel's restaurant overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The venue was expensive and public, witnesses everywhere, security cameras, wealthy patrons who'd notice if anything went wrong. Exactly the kind of place where criminals did business while maintaining deniability. Chukwudi Okafor arrived precisely at 7, flanked by 2 bodyguards who positioned themselves at nearby tables. Chukwudi was in his 50s, well-dressed in traditional Nigerian agbada with gold embroidery. He could have been a businessman, a pastor, or a politician. In Lagos, he was all three, plus a criminal mastermind. Kwame Asante. Chukwudi's handshake was firm, his smile practiced. I've heard interesting things about you. Connect Ghana is impressive. 6 million users, expansion into 5 countries. You're making real money, not like that fool Richard who had to steal. I prefer earning to stealing, Kwame said, sitting across from him. Creates fewer problems. Usually, yes, but sometimes earning is too slow, and opportunities present themselves. Chukwudi ordered palm wine despite the upscale setting. So, you promised information about Richard's hidden assets. I'm listening. First, we established terms. You get what you're owed. Akosua Mensah walks away clean, untouched, forgotten. No revenge, no future threats, no using her as leverage. Agreed? That depends on the value of your information. Kwame slid a single piece of paper across the table. An account number, nothing more. That account contains 3 million CDs. Money Richard stole from your laundering operation through the bank. His family doesn't know about it. The police don't know about it. But I know about it, and I can make it accessible to you. Chukwudi's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened slightly on his glass. 3 million CDs is good, but I'm owed 8 million. What about the rest? The rest is in properties. 2 houses in Kumasi registered under shell companies, commercial real estate in Takoradi, investments in a gold mining operation. I have the documentation for all of it. Documentation that proves those assets came from your money, not Richard's family wealth. And you're giving me this information out of goodness of your heart? I'm giving you this information because I want Akosua Mensah left alone. I'm also giving you a choice. Chase after Richard's family through lawyers and courts, which will take years and get you nothing because they'll hide everything behind legal structures. Or take what I'm offering now, recover most of your losses immediately, and move on. Chukwudi studied Kwame for a long moment. You love this woman still, even after she left you for Richard. That's why you're protecting her. What I feel for her is irrelevant. What's relevant is whether we have a deal. Why should I trust you? What stops you from going to the police after I leave Akosua alone? Because going to the police helps no one, Kwame said. It puts Akosua in danger as a witness. It puts me in danger for obstructing justice. And it gets you nothing. The courts will freeze everything while they investigate. My way, everyone gets something. You get your money. Akosua gets her life. I get peace of mind. That's how business works when everyone's smart. Chukwudi laughed, genuine this time. You should have been Nigerian. You think like us, practical, not emotional. He extended his hand. Deal. Give me the documentation, the account access, everything. And the woman is forgotten. Tell her to stay out of Lagos, though. I can't control what every soldier in my organization remembers. Fair enough. They shook hands and Kwame passed over an envelope containing everything Chukwudi needed. As the Nigerian crime lord left with his bodyguards, Kwame sat alone at the table, watching waves crash against the beach in the darkness. His phone rang. Niar Ma, his lawyer. The police want to interview Akosua, Ni said. They found evidence Richard was planning to marry her to legitimize some of his assets. They think she might have been complicit. She wasn't. She was just another one of his victims. You and I know that. But the investigators see a woman who was about to marry into money while Richard was stealing millions. They're calling her in tomorrow morning for questioning. Kwame closed his eyes. One problem solved, another emerging. That was how it worked when you got involved in other people's chaos. The problems multiplied like weeds. I'll be there with her, Kwame said. Make sure our best defense attorney is present. Akosua doesn't say anything without legal counsel. Kwame, are you sure about this? Getting deeper into her mess? No, Kwame admitted, but I'm already in it. Might as well see it through. After ending the call, he sat watching the ocean for another hour, thinking about choices and consequences, about the woman he'd once loved and the man he'd become. Somewhere in the distance, lightning flashed over the water, another storm approaching Accra. His phone buzzed, a text from Akosua. Thank you for today, for everything. I don't deserve your help, but I'm grateful for it. Whatever happens tomorrow at the police station, I want you to know you've already done more than enough. Kwame didn't respond immediately. Instead, he thought about the account she'd given him access to, the 3 million cedis he'd just handed over to a Nigerian crime lord. Money that had been partially in Akoshua's name, money she could have used to rebuild her life. He'd given it away to protect her, and she didn't even know what she'd lost. Finally, he typed back, "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be difficult. We'll face it together." As he drove home through Accra's nighttime traffic, Kwame wondered if he was protecting Akoshua or punishing himself. Maybe both. Maybe neither. All he knew was that the woman who'd broken his heart was now completely dependent on him for survival. And whether that was justice, revenge, or just life's bitter irony, he couldn't quite decide. Is Kwame falling back in love with Akoshua, or is he just being noble? What do you think will happen at the police station? Drop your predictions in the comments. This story is getting more intense with every chapter. Make sure you're subscribed to Tales by Ola so you don't miss what happens next. Hit that like button if you're Team Kwame. The Ghana Police Headquarters in Accra's Ministries area was buzzing with activity when Kwame arrived with Akoshua the next morning. Journalists had caught wind that Richard Osei's former fiancée was being questioned, and camera crews blocked the entrance, shouting questions as security pushed them back. "Miss Mensah, did you know about the embezzlement? Were you helping Richard launder money? Is it true you're dating Kwame Asante now?" Kwame's security team formed a protective barrier as they escorted Akoshua through the chaos. She kept her head down, wearing a simple dress and no jewelry, the image of a respectful woman cooperating with authorities, not a criminal conspirator. Ni Arma had coached her well. Inside the interrogation room, Detective Inspector AJ waited, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. Beside her sat a younger officer taking notes and a representative from the Economic and Organized Crime Office. "Miss Mensah," Inspector AJ began once everyone was seated, "thank you for coming voluntarily. This is just a preliminary interview to understand your relationship with Richard Osei and your knowledge of his financial activities." "My client is happy to cooperate," said Nana Aguiman, the defense attorney Kwame had hired, one of Accra's most expensive legal minds. "But let's be clear from the start. Miss Mensah is a victim of Mr. Osei's deception, not a co-conspirator." Inspector Ajayi smiled thinly. "We'll determine that through our questions. Miss Mensah, how long were you in a relationship with the accused?" "About 2.5 years," Akosua answered, her voice steady despite the trembling of her hands under the table. Kwame sat in the corner as an observer, since he wasn't family or legal representation, but his presence seemed to calm her. "And during this time, did Mr. Osei discuss his work at Stanbic Bank with you?" "Sometimes. He'd mention being tired from meetings or dealing with difficult clients, but he never discussed specific transactions or accounts. I'm not a financial person. I'm a nurse. A nurse who hasn't worked in over a year," the EOCO representative noted, flipping through papers. "Yet you maintained an expensive lifestyle. Apartment in cantonments, designer clothes, international travel. How did you afford these things?" "Richard provided for me. He said he wanted to take care of me, that I didn't need to work." "Convenient." Inspector Ajay leaned forward. "Miss Mensah, we've discovered that your name appears on several bank accounts connected to Mr. Osei, accounts containing millions of cedis. Can you explain that?" Akosua glanced at Nana Aguiman, who nodded permission to answer. "Richard added my name to some accounts. He said it was for wedding planning, for our future together. I never used the money. I didn't even know how much was in those accounts until after his arrest." "You expect us to believe that a woman about to marry a wealthy man never checked the bank accounts in her own name?" "My client's financial naivety isn't a crime," Nana interjected. "Many women trust their partners to handle money matters, especially in relationships where the man presents himself as financially sophisticated. Or many women deliberately remain ignorant so they can claim innocence later," Inspector Aji countered. She pulled out a document. "Miss Mensah, do you recognize this?" It was a property deed. Akosua's eyes widened as she read it. This has my signature, but I never signed any property documents. This deed transfers ownership of a commercial property in Takoradi to you." The property is worth approximately 2 million cedis. Your signature is dated 3 months ago. That's impossible. I've never been to Takoradi. I never signed this. Kwame leaned forward, examining the document. The signature looked like Akoshua's, but something was off about the way the letters curved. Inspector, has this signature been verified by a handwriting expert? That's ongoing, but Miss Mensah, even if the signature is forged, the fact remains that someone used your identity to hide stolen assets. Either you were complicit or you were remarkably careless about how your personal information was being used. My client was manipulated by a sophisticated criminal, Nana said firmly. Richard Osei had access to her documents, her identification, everything needed to forge signatures. This is classic financial abuse, making the victim appear complicit while they're actually being used. The interrogation continued for 2 more hours. They asked about trips Akosua had taken with Richard, about meetings she'd attended, about conversations she might have overheard. With each question, a picture emerged of a woman who'd been kept deliberately ignorant, showered with luxury, while being positioned as a potential scapegoat. Finally, Inspector Ajay sat back. Miss Mensah, here's my assessment. Either you're a brilliant criminal who helped Richard steal millions, or you're incredibly foolish for not asking questions when a banker suddenly showered you with unexplained wealth. Given the evidence, I'm inclined toward the latter. So she's free to go? Nana asked. For now. But Miss Mensah, you cannot leave Acre without permission. We may have follow-up questions. And if we discover any evidence of active participation in the embezzlement scheme, you will be arrested. Do you understand? Yes, Inspector, I understand. Outside the police station, Akosua collapsed against Kwame's car, shaking with relief and residual fear. The journalists had been cleared away, but phones were everywhere, citizens recording everything for social media. That property deed, Akosua said once they were safely in the car. Kwame, I swear I never signed it. Richard must have. I know. The signature was forged. I could tell from the pressure points on certain letters. Richard was setting you up to take the fall if he got caught. But why? If he loved me. He didn't love you, Akosua. He used you, just like he used everyone in his life. Kwame's voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel. The real question is how many other documents exist with your forged signature? Properties, accounts, contracts. You could be legally tied to his crimes in ways we haven't discovered yet. She put her face in her hands. This nightmare never ends. It will end. But we need to be strategic. Kwame pulled out his phone. Nee is filing paperwork to legally distance you from all of Richard's assets. We're claiming identity theft and fraud. It'll take time, but it's your best defense. How much is this costing you? The lawyers, the security, everything? Don't worry about that. Kwame, I have to worry about it. I already owe you so much. You don't owe me anything. He looked at her directly. I'm not keeping a ledger, Akosua. I'm not calculating what you cost me versus what you're worth. I'm just doing what needs to be done. But why? After everything I did to you, because, Kwame interrupted, his voice softer now, someone once told me that good doesn't pay bills, doesn't secure futures, doesn't matter in the real world. I spent 3 years proving that person wrong. Proving that you can be successful and decent, wealthy and kind, powerful and compassionate. If I abandon you now, I prove you were right all along, and I refuse to do that. Tears streamed down Akosua's face. I was so wrong about you, about everything. Before Kwame could respond, his phone rang. An unknown number. He answered cautiously. Yes? Mr. Asante, my name is Grace Okoro. I'm a journalist with Joy News. I'm investigating Richard Osei's criminal network, and I believe you have information that could expose something much bigger than bank fraud. I don't speak to journalists without appointments. This isn't about getting a statement. This is about warning you. Richard wasn't working alone, and he wasn't the mastermind. There are people in Ghana's government, in the banking sector, in law enforcement, people who were part of his operation and who will do anything to keep it quiet. People who know you've been protecting Richard's ex-fiancée. Kwame's grip tightened on the phone. What people? Not over the phone. Can we meet? Today? It's urgent, Mr. Asante. I think you and Miss Mensah might be in more danger than you realize. After hanging up, Kwame sat in silence, his mind racing. He thought handling Chukwudi Okafor in the Nigerian syndicate was the end of it. But if Grace was right, Richard's network reached higher than anyone suspected, into the institutions meant to enforce the law. What is it? Akosua asked, seeing his expression. We need to go somewhere safe, somewhere off the grid. He started the car. I'm taking you to my family compound in the eastern region. It's remote, secure, and no one knows about it except my closest relatives. Kwame, you're scaring me. What did that journalist say? That we're not dealing with one criminal. We're dealing with a system. He pulled into traffic, checking his mirrors constantly for tails. Richard was just one piece of a larger operation, and everyone who benefits from that operation will want to make sure his ex-fiancée, the woman who might know their secrets, stays quiet. But I don't know their secrets. I don't know anything. They don't know that. And in their world, it's safer to eliminate potential threats than to verify whether they're actually dangerous. As they drove out of Accra toward the eastern region's dense forests and cocoa farms, Kwame made a series of calls to his security team, to Niarma, to his cousin Kojo, who understood how criminal networks operated. The family compound was a 2-hour drive from the city, hidden in the hills near Aburi. It had belonged to Kwame's grandfather, a cocoa farmer who'd built a modest fortune that his children had squandered. Kwame had purchased it back 5 years ago, renovated it, and maintained it as a private retreat, somewhere to escape the pressure of being Ghana's tech golden boy. The compound consisted of 3 buildings arranged around a central courtyard with a massive mango tree. Solar panels on the roofs provided power. A natural spring supplied water. You could disappear here for months if needed. Kwame's Aunt Amma lived there permanently, maintaining the property and the small cocoa farm. She met them at the gate, a sturdy woman in her 60s wearing traditional kaba and slit, her gray hair wrapped in a colorful scarf. Kwame, you didn't tell me you were coming. Then she saw Akosua and her expression shifted to recognition. Is that? Yes, Auntie. We need to stay here for a few days. Quietly. No visitors. No telling anyone we're here. Aunt Amma's face grew serious. She'd raised Kwame after his mother died, understood him better than anyone. You're in trouble. We're being cautious, that's all. She looked at Akosua with undisguised curiosity and assessment. The girl who broke your heart. I remember her. Auntie, now she's here, and you're protecting her. Interesting how life works. She gestured toward the main house. Come, you must be hungry. I made groundnut soup this morning. As Aunt Amma led them inside, Akosua whispered to Kwame, She hates me. She doesn't hate you. She hates what you did to me. There's a difference. Inside, the compound was simple but comfortable. Polished concrete floors, wooden furniture, rooms that smelled of cedar and old stories. Aunt Amma served them soup and rice, watching Akosua with sharp eyes that missed nothing. So, Aunt Amma said finally, what exactly are you running from? Kwame explained everything. Richard's arrest, the Nigerian syndicate, the police interrogation, the journalist's warning about a wider network. Aunt Amma listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker. You've gotten yourself mixed up in serious business, she said when he finished. For this one. She gestured at Akosua. Kwame, I know you have a good heart, but sometimes a good heart makes foolish choices. Auntie, I couldn't just abandon her. Why not? She abandoned you. Left you when you were struggling, chose money over love. Now she's in trouble and you come running like a puppy. Where's your pride? My pride is intact, Kwame said quietly, but so is my conscience. I can live with her leaving me. I couldn't live with her being hurt or killed when I had the power to prevent it. Aunt Amma studied him for a long moment, then sighed. You're just like your grandfather. He saved a rival farmer from bankruptcy once, a man who tried to steal our land. Everyone called him foolish, but he said doing right isn't about whether people deserve it. It's about who you choose to be. She stood collecting dishes. You can stay as long as needed, but be careful, Kwame. Good hearts can be exploited. That evening, as the sun set over the cocoa farms, Kwame met with Grace Okoro via encrypted video call. The journalist was in her 30s, professional and intense. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me, Mr. Asante. What I'm about to tell you is based on 2 years of investigation, much of it unpublished because my editors are afraid of the people involved. I'm listening. Grace pulled up documents on screen. Richard Osei was part of a network we're calling the Cedar Group. Powerful people in Ghana's financial sector who've been laundering money for international criminal organizations. They use legitimate banks, government contracts, and real estate to clean billions of cedis. The Nigerian syndicate you dealt with is one client. There are others from China, Lebanon, and Europe. How high does this network go? Bank executives, politicians, military officers, even judges. People with the power to make investigations disappear. Witnesses recant, evidence vanish. Richard got careless and got caught, but the others are still operating, and they're terrified that he'll talk or that his fiancée knows something. Akosua knows nothing. She was just window dressing for Richard's respectable image. I believe you, but the Cedar Group doesn't know that. To them, she's a liability that needs to be managed. Grace leaned closer to her camera. Mr. Asante, 3 people connected to Richard's case have died in the past week. A bank employee who was cooperating with investigators, car accident, a lawyer who was preparing testimony, house fire, a witness who saw Richard meeting with Cedar Group members. Armed robbery gone wrong. The police are calling it coincidence. I'm calling it a cleanup operation. Kwame felt ice in his veins. You're saying they're killing anyone who might expose them? Yes, and Miss Mensa is on that list. So are you now for protecting her and asking questions? That's why I called, not for a story, but to warn you. These people are extremely dangerous and completely protected. If you're going to fight them, you need to be very, very careful. After the call ended, Kwame sat in the darkness of the compound, listening to crickets and distant nightbirds. He'd thought he was protecting Akosua from a Nigerian crime lord and some legal troubles. Instead, he'd stepped into something far more dangerous. A web of corruption that reached into the highest levels of Ghanaian society. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop asking questions about Richard Osei. Stop protecting the girl. Walk away while you still can. This is your only warning. Kwame stared at the message. Someone was watching him. Someone knew where he was, who he was with, what he was doing. The compound wasn't as safe as he'd thought. He found Akosua in the guest room, staring out the window at the starlit sky. Can't sleep? He asked. Every time I close my eyes, I see those men with guns, or Richard's face when he was arrested, or my future disappearing. She turned to face him. Kwame, I heard you on that video call. I know how bad this is. You need to walk away. Go back to Accra, to your company, to your life. I'll figure something out. What will you figure out? How to survive against people who kill witnesses? I don't know. But I can't let you destroy everything you built because of me. Not again. Her voice broke. 3 years ago, I left because I thought you'd never amount to anything. Now you're rich and successful and powerful, and I'm destroying that too. I'm poison, Kwame. Everything I touch turns to ash. He moved closer, his expression unreadable in the dim light. You want to know the real reason I'm helping you? It's not nobility or kindness or leftover love. It's because every time I look at you, I see who I used to be. Powerless, desperate, depending on others for survival. I hated that feeling, hated being vulnerable, and I swore that if I ever had the power to change someone else's situation like that, I would. So I'm your charity project? Your way of proving you're better than I was? Maybe, or maybe I'm proving I'm better than I was. The man who had nothing and felt like nothing. You showed me that wealth without character is empty. Now I'm showing you that character without wealth is incomplete. You need both to survive in this world. Before Akosua could respond, gunshots shattered the peaceful night. They came from the compound's perimeter, 3 sharp cracks, followed by shouting. Kwame immediately pulled Akosua to the floor as more shots rang out. Stay down, he commanded, crawling toward the door. Aunt Amma burst in, carrying an old hunting rifle. Armed men at the gate, 4 of them. They're demanding we send out the girl. Kwame's mind raced. The compound was defensible, but not a fortress. His security team was 30 minutes away in Koforidua. The local police might be compromised. They were trapped. There's a back path through the cocoa farm, Aunt Amma said. Leads to the main road 2 kilometers away. I can hold them here while you escape. Auntie, no. This is my land, my home. I know every tree, every hiding spot. You take the girl and go. Now! More gunshots. Closer. They were breaking through the gate. Kwame grabbed Akosua's hand, pulling her toward the back of the house. They ran through the darkness, stumbling over roots and rocks, the cocoa trees closing around them like protective shadows. Behind them, they heard shouting, more gunfire, Aunt Amma's rifle responding with defiant cracks. They ran until their lungs burned, until the sounds of violence faded behind them, until they reached the main road where a miracle appeared. A taxi, late-night driver heading back to Accra. Hospital, Kwame gasped, throwing money at the confused driver. Drive fast. Emergency. As the taxi sped away, Kwame called his security team, the police, his cousin Kojo, everyone who might help Aunt Amma and stop the gunman. Beside him, Akosua was crying silently. This is all my fault. Your aunt, your family compound, everything. No, Kwame said firmly, though his own hands were shaking. This is the Cedar Group's fault. This is Richard's fault. This is corruption's fault, but not yours. His phone rang, a number he recognized, Chukwudi Okafor, the Nigerian crime lord. Mr. Asante, I just heard what happened at your family compound. That wasn't my people. Then whose people? The Cedar Group. They've decided you're a threat that needs to be eliminated. You and the girl both. A pause. I kept my word. My organization won't touch her. But I can't control what the Ghanaians do. You need to understand, these people own your country's institutions. Police, judges, military, they're all compromised. If you stay in Ghana, you die. What are you suggesting? Leave, tonight. I have a private plane that can take you to Lagos, then anywhere you want. Disappear for a while, let this blow over. I'm not running. Then you're dying. Is that really the legacy you want? Kwame Asante, brilliant entrepreneur, killed over someone else's woman? Chukwudi's voice hardened. I respect your courage, but courage without strategy is suicide. Think about it. The call ended. Kwame sat in the taxi with Akosua trembling beside him, his mind spinning with impossible choices. Fight a system that controlled everything, or flee and lose everything he'd built. Save Akosua and risk his own life, or abandon her to save himself. Be the good man who dies young, or the practical man who lives with regret. What are we going to do? Akosua whispered. Kwame looked at her, this woman who'd broken his heart and accidentally pulled him into a war against Ghana's most powerful criminals. This woman who represented everything he'd overcome and everything he still struggled with. I don't know yet, he admitted, but whatever I decide, there's no going back. The taxi raced through the darkness toward Accra, carrying two people who just learned that sometimes the price of doing the right thing is higher than anyone should have to pay. Will Kwame run or fight? Should he save himself or risk everything for Akosua? The safe house in Tama, Ghana's port city, smelled of salt air and old concrete. Kwame had purchased the property 2 years ago through a shell company, a modest bungalow in a middle-class neighborhood where nobody asked questions and neighbors minded their own business. It was the kind of place a tech millionaire would never be expected to hide. Akosua sat on the worn sofa, wrapped in a blanket despite the humid heat. She hadn't spoken since they'd received the news an hour ago. Aunt Amma had survived the attack. The gunman had fled when local farmers, hearing the shots, arrived with machetes and hunting rifles. Rural Ghana still protected its own, but the message was clear. Nowhere was safe. Kwame stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with his security team. I want 24-hour surveillance on all my properties. Anyone approaches who isn't cleared, you call me immediately. And get Aunt Amma to a private hospital in Accra, the best care available. Boss, the police want to question you about the attack, Sergeant Mensah said. They're saying it might have been a robbery gone wrong. A robbery? In a remote compound with nothing valuable? They're either stupid or complicit. Kwame's voice was tight with anger. Tell them I'll come in when I have my lawyers present, not before. After hanging up, he turned to find Akosua watching him with hollow eyes. Your aunt almost died because of me, she said. How many more people will get hurt before you accept that I'm not worth it? That's not your decision to make. Then whose is it? Yours. You think you can just decide who lives and dies? Who suffers and who's protected? Her voice rose with hysteria. I left you, Kwame. I called you nothing. I chose money over love and walked away without looking back. Why are you doing this? Because someone has to. Kwame's control finally snapped. Because if everyone who got betrayed turned bitter and refused to help anyone, the world would be nothing but victims and predators. Because I spent 3 years becoming successful so I could be the kind of man who doesn't abandon people when it's inconvenient. But I abandoned you. Yes, you did. And it hurt like hell. It broke me in ways I'm still healing from. But Akosua, that doesn't mean I become you. That doesn't mean I turn into someone who only helps people who deserve it, who only does good when there's something in it for me. If I do that, you win. Your philosophy wins. That money is all that matters. That character is worthless. That good people finish last. Tears streamed down Akosua's face. I was wrong. About everything. About you. About Richard. About what matters in life. But my being wrong doesn't fix anything. Those men will keep coming. The Cedar Group will keep hunting us. And eventually, Kwame's phone rang, interrupting her. Grace Okoro, the journalist. Mr. Asante, I have news. Richard Osi is dead. The words hung in the air like smoke. What? Found in his cell 2 hours ago. Prison officials are calling it suicide. Hung himself with bedsheets. But my sources say there were signs of struggle, bruising inconsistent with hanging. They killed him, Kwame. The Cedar Group killed him to make sure he couldn't talk. Kwame sat down heavily. Richard, the man who'd stolen Akosua, who'd destroyed lives with his greed, who'd been the catalyst for this entire nightmare, was dead, murdered to protect people even more powerful than he'd been. There's more, Grace continued. Before he died, Richard managed to get a message out through a sympathetic guard. He said he had insurance, evidence against the Cedar Group hidden somewhere, documentation of every transaction, every name, every crime. He said if anything happened to him, the location would be revealed. Where is it? That's the problem. The only person who knows is Akosua Mensah. Kwame looked at Akosua, who'd gone pale. What is Grace talking about? Akosua's hands trembled. A month before the wedding, Richard gave me something. A flash drive. He said it contained photos and videos from our relationship. Sentimental stuff. He told me to keep it somewhere safe, somewhere only I knew about, and never look at it because it was a surprise for after we got married. Where is it? In my mother's house in Koforidua, hidden in an old jewelry box I gave her for safekeeping. Akosua's voice was barely a whisper. Kwame, if that flash drive has evidence against the Cedar Group, and they find out I have it, they'll kill your mother to get it. Kwame was already moving, grabbing his car keys. Grace, I need you to do something. Publish what you know about the Cedar Group. Tonight, everything. I told you my editors won't. I'm not talking about your editors. I'm talking about social media, blogs, alternative news sites. Scatter the information everywhere so they can't contain it. Make it loud enough that killing us becomes pointless because the truth is already out. Kwame, that could end my career. I'd never work in mainstream journalism again. But you'd be alive, and you'd have done what journalists are supposed to do. Expose corruption, damn the consequences. He paused. I'll fund an independent news platform for you. Full editorial control, proper resources, legal protection. All I ask is that you break this story tonight, before more people die. Silence. Then, send me everything you have on Richard, Akosua, the Nigerian syndicate, all of it. I'll have the story published in 2 hours. Kwame ended the call and turned to Akosua. We're going to Koforidua. We're getting that flash drive, and then we're going to burn the Cedar Group to the ground. That's suicide. They'll be watching my mother's house, which is why we're not going alone. Kwame made another call. Kojo, I need you and everyone you trust, armed, experienced. Meet me in Koforidua in 1 hour. We're extracting something from a compromised location. His cousin's voice was grim. This is it? The big move? This is it. The drive to Koforidua took 45 minutes at dangerous speeds. Kwame's security team followed in 2 vehicles, 6 men total, all with military or police backgrounds, all loyal to Kwame personally rather than any institution. Akosua's mother lived in a modest house in Koforidua's Efiduase neighborhood, a place where retired teachers and small business owners spent their final years in peace, or used to before her daughter got engaged to a criminal. They parked 2 streets away and approached on foot, using darkness and back alleys for cover. Kwame's security spread out, checking for surveillance, for waiting gunmen, for anything that suggested the Cedar Group had gotten there first. 2 men in a car across the street, Sergeant Mensah reported via radio. Watching the house. Professional posture. Definitely not local. Can you handle them quietly? Give us 3 minutes. Those 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. Kwame and Akosua waited in the shadows while his team moved like ghosts through the neighborhood. Then Sergeant Mensah's voice. Clear. Both men unconscious in the car. We've got maybe 20 minutes before someone checks on them. They ran to the house. Akosua knocked urgently. Mama, it's me. Open the door. Akosua's mother, Afua, opened the door in her nightgown, confusion turning to fear when she saw armed men. Akosua, what's happening? Why are there... No time, Mama. I need the jewelry box I gave you. The wooden one with the carved flowers. Where is it? In my bedroom in the wardrobe. But Akosua was already moving, Kwame following. She found the jewelry box exactly where her mother kept it, dumped out the modest collection of necklaces and earrings, and felt along the bottom until a hidden panel clicked open. The flash drive was small, black, unremarkable. It could have been anything. Family photos, music files, forgotten documents. Instead, it contained information powerful enough to topple Ghana's financial elite. Got it, Akosua said, clutching it like a talisman. We need to go. Now. Kwame turned to Efua. Ma, you can't stay here. Pack a bag. Essentials only. You're coming with us. Coming where? What's going on? People are trying to hurt Akosua. Bad people. We're protecting her. But they might come here looking for her. It's not safe. Efua looked at her daughter, really looked at her, and saw the fear, the exhaustion, the desperation. Whatever her daughter had gotten involved in, it was serious. 5 minutes, I'll pack. Outside, Sergeant Mensah's voice crackled urgently over the radio. Boss, we have a problem. 3 vehicles approaching fast from different directions. Military-style coordination. This isn't random. It's an operation. Kwame pulled out his gun, a Glock he'd learned to shoot after becoming wealthy enough to be a target. How long until they reach us? 2 minutes, maybe less. Everyone out, now, Kwame shouted. Efua, leave the bag. We're going. They burst out of the house as headlights flooded the street from multiple directions. Car doors slammed. Voices shouted commands in both English and Twi. These weren't thugs or hired muscle. These were professionals. Kwame's security team returned fire, providing cover as they retreated toward their vehicles. Bullets shattered windows and sparked off concrete. Neighbors' lights turned on, but nobody came outside. In Ghana, you survived by staying out of powerful people's business. Get to the cars! Kwame pushed Akosua and her mother toward the SUVs while his team laid down suppressing fire. They were 10 meters from the vehicles when a man stepped out of the shadows directly in their path. Tall, well-dressed, holding a pistol with the casual confidence of someone who killed often. Mr. Asante, Miss Mensah. His voice was cultured, educated. This has gone far enough. Give me the flash drive. And everyone walks away alive. Who are you? Kwame demanded, positioning himself between the gunman and the women. Someone who represents interests much larger than you can imagine. That flash drive contains information that cannot become public. Give it to me, or everyone you love dies tonight. Your aunt, Miss Mensah's mother, you, her, everyone. If we give it to you, we die anyway. At least this way, we have leverage. The man smiled coldly. Leverage requires time, Mr. Asante. You have none. In 30 seconds, my team will overwhelm your security and kill everyone here. Or you hand over the flash drive, and I give you a 24-hour head start before we come looking. Your choice. Kwame's mind raced. The man was right. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, trapped. But giving up the flash drive meant giving up their only protection, their only chance to expose the Cedar Group. Then Akosua did something that shocked everyone. She pulled the flash drive from her pocket and threw it, not toward the gunman, but toward the gathering crowd of neighbors who'd emerged despite the danger, filming everything on their phones. 20 million CDs stolen from Ghana's banks, she shouted. Names of everyone involved. It's all on that drive. Share it. Upload it. Don't let them silence us. For a moment, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. The neighbors scrambled for the flash drive, some wanting to help, others sensing opportunity. The gunman's team, suddenly faced with dozens of witnesses recording everything, hesitated. In Ghana, social media moved faster than bullets, and a massacre captured on phones would bring pressure even the Cedar Group couldn't contain. Move! Kwame seized the opportunity, pulling Akosua and her mother toward the SUVs. They piled in as his security team laid down covering fire, not to kill, but to create chaos and confusion. The vehicles roared to life and tore through Koforidua's streets, while behind them, the neighborhood erupted into shouting, filming, sharing. By the time they reached the highway back to Accra, videos were already appearing online. Shaky footage of armed men attacking a peaceful neighborhood, of a woman throwing a flash drive to protect evidence, of regular Ghanaians standing up to power. Kwame's phone exploded with notifications. Grace Okoro's story had gone live across multiple platforms simultaneously. Detailed accusations against the Cedar Group, names of those involved, documentation of years of corruption. Within minutes, it was trending across Ghana and West Africa. You did it, Kwame said to Akosua, who was shaking in the back seat with her mother holding her. You got the evidence out where they can't suppress it. Did I? Akosua laughed hysterically. Or did I just sign our death warrants faster? Those people won't stop until we're dead, evidence or not. Maybe. But now the whole country is watching. Judges, journalists, citizens, everyone knows about the Cedar Group. They can still kill us, but they can't make it quiet. And powerful people in Ghana hate nothing more than public scrutiny. His phone rang, an unknown number from Nigeria. Kwame answered, expecting Chukwudi Okafor, instead a different voice, older, with authority that made even phone connections feel heavy. Mr. Asante, I am Ambassador Adebayo Okonkwo, Nigerian High Commissioner to Ghana. I represent interests that are concerned about recent developments, the Cedar Group, among others. Mr. Asante, you've done something remarkable tonight. You've exposed a network that my government has been investigating for years. Intelligence agencies across West Africa have been trying to build cases against these people, but they're too well protected within Ghana's institutions. And now, thanks to your journalist friend and that flash drive, we have grounds for international intervention. The economic community of West African states is already calling for emergency meetings. Ghana's president is under pressure to act. You've created a political crisis that can't be ignored. That doesn't keep us alive. No, it doesn't. Which is why I'm offering you protection. Nigerian diplomatic immunity, safe transport to Lagos, then anywhere you want to go. You, Miss Mensah, her mother, all under protection until this resolves. And in exchange, you testify, fully and publicly, tell your story, verify the evidence, help us destroy the Cedar Group completely. They've been parasites on West Africa's economy for too long. It's time to cut them out. Kwame looked at Akosua, at her mother, at his security team who'd risked their lives. They were exhausted, terrified, running on adrenaline and hope. How soon can you arrange the protection? I have vehicles at the Nigerian High Commission in Accra. Come there, tonight. Once you're on diplomatic property, you're untouchable. After ending the call, Kwame explained the offer to everyone in the vehicle. It's a trap, Sergeant Mensah said immediately. Diplomatic immunity doesn't mean anything if they kill you before you reach the embassy. Maybe, but what's our alternative? Keep running? Hope the publicity protects us? They almost got us tonight despite everything. I say we fight, Afua said suddenly, her voice surprising everyone. My daughter made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but she's trying to make them right. And you, Mr. Asante, you've shown more character than any rich man I've ever known. If we run now, we let evil win. If we testify, maybe we change something. Maybe other girls won't be fooled by men like Richard. Maybe other criminals will think twice. Akosua stared at her mother. Mama, they could kill us. Everyone dies, my daughter. The question is what you stand for before you do. Afua smiled sadly. I taught you to chase money and security. I was wrong. This man, she gestured at Kwame, he's teaching you something better. Let's not waste the lesson. Kwame felt something shift in his chest. A weight he'd been carrying for 3 years suddenly lighter. Afua's words weren't forgiveness for Akosua's betrayal, but they were acknowledgement. Recognition that the path forward wasn't about revenge or validation, but about choosing who you wanted to be. All right, he said. We go to the Nigerian High Commission. We testify, and we trust that doing the right thing matters more than staying safe. As they drove toward Accra through the pre-dawn darkness, news alerts continued flooding Kwame's phone. The Minister of Finance had been arrested. 2 bank executives had fled the country. The Ghana Police Service was announcing a task force to investigate the Cedar Group's activities. The system was cracking. Not broken yet, but cracking. When they arrived at the Nigerian High Commission, armed guards immediately surrounded their vehicles and escorted them through the gates. Once inside, the tension that had held Kwame together for days finally released, and he nearly collapsed. Ambassador Okonkwo met them personally, a distinguished man in his 60s who'd seen enough African politics to know how rare true courage was. Mr. Asante, Miss Mensah, you've done your countries a service. Rest now. Tomorrow the real work begins. In a secure room with comfortable beds and armed guards outside, Kwame finally allowed himself to breathe. Across the room, Akosua sat with her mother, both of them processing everything that had happened. Kwame? Akosua's voice was soft in the darkness. Thank you. For everything. For not giving up on me even when I deserved it. I didn't do it for you, Kwame said, his eyes closed. I did it for me. To prove that the man I became is better than the circumstances that made him. And did you? Prove it. He thought about the question. 3 years ago, Akosua had left him because he was poor and powerless. Tonight, with all his wealth and success, he'd risked everything to protect her, not because she deserved it, but because he'd chosen to be someone who helped, even when it hurt. Yes, he said finally. I think I did. Outside, Accra was waking up to a new Ghana, one where corruption had been exposed, where ordinary citizens had stood up to power, where a phone seller who became a millionaire had proven that success and integrity weren't mutually exclusive. The battle wasn't over. The Cedar Group would fight back. Witnesses would be threatened. Powerful people would try to contain the damage. But something fundamental had shifted. And in a secure room in the Nigerian High Commission, 3 people who'd survived betrayal, violence, and corruption finally slept. Not in safety, but in the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, doing the right thing still mattered in a world that often rewarded the opposite. Can Kwame and Akosua survive long enough to testify? Will the Cedar Group be destroyed, or will they strike back? What do you think happens next? Drop your predictions below. And if this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, subscribe to Tales by Ola and hit that notification bell. 6 months later, Kwame stood on the balcony of his new apartment in Ikoyi, Lagos, watching the Atlantic Ocean crash against the shoreline. Nigeria's commercial capital had become his temporary home. Temporary because nothing felt permanent anymore. Not after everything that had happened. The testimony had taken 3 months. International tribunals, parliamentary hearings in both Ghana and Nigeria, depositions for prosecutors across West Africa. Kwame, Akosua, and dozens of other witnesses had laid bare the entire Cedar Group operation. 20 years of corruption, billions of cedis stolen, lives destroyed. The results had been dramatic. Ghana's finance minister was in prison awaiting trial. 7 bank executives had been arrested. 2 Supreme Court judges had resigned in disgrace. The entire leadership of Stanbic Bank's corporate division had been replaced. The Nigerian syndicate that had threatened Akosua had been dismantled by Interpol, with Chukwudi Okafor himself extradited to face charges. And Richard Osei, the man whose greed and betrayal had set everything in motion, was buried in a quiet cemetery in Accra, his family too ashamed to give him the elaborate funeral they'd once planned. But victory had come with costs. Connect Ghana had suffered during Kwame's absence. Competitors had poached clients. Investors had grown nervous about his involvement in a corruption scandal, even though he'd been exposing it rather than participating. The company's valuation had dropped by 40%. Three of his senior executives had resigned, unable to handle the pressure and uncertainty. Kwame had been forced to sell his majority stake to a South African tech firm just to keep the company viable. He'd walked away with enough money to remain wealthy, about 30 million cedis after taxes and legal fees, but he was no longer the boy wonder of Ghana's tech scene. He was just another entrepreneur who'd had his moment and moved on. The personal costs had been higher. Aunt Amma had recovered from the attack, but she'd sold the family compound and moved to Kumasi to live with relatives. She said she couldn't sleep in a place where men with guns had tried to kill her. Kwame had bought her a new house, but the damage to her peace of mind couldn't be repaired with money. Several of his security team members had been injured during the various confrontations. Sergeant Mensah had taken a bullet to the shoulder during the Kafordua extraction. He'd survived, but he'd retired afterward, saying he was too old to be dodging bullets for anyone. And then there was Akosua. Kwame heard the apartment door open behind him. She emerged onto the balcony carrying 2 cups of coffee, a morning ritual they developed over the past 6 months of living under diplomatic protection in Lagos. She looked different now. Her expensive weave was gone, replaced by a short natural cut that reminded Kwame of the nursing student he'd first fallen in love with. She wore simple jeans and a t-shirt, no designer labels, no jewelry. The woman who chased wealth and status had been replaced by someone humbler, quieter, more uncertain. The lawyer called, Akosua said, handing him coffee. The Ghana Bar Association has cleared me of any criminal wrongdoing. I'm officially free to return to Accra if I want. Do you want to? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ocean. I don't know. Everything I knew there is gone. My friends disappeared when the scandal broke. Richard's family is threatening to sue me for defamation, even though he's dead and his crimes are proven. My nursing license is expired, and I'd have to retrain. It feels like starting over from nothing. I know that feeling, Kwame said softly. It's not as bad as you think. Says the man who turned nothing into millions, and then lost most of it protecting you. The words came out harsher than intended. Sorry, that wasn't fair. No, it's completely fair. Akosua set down her coffee cup. Kwame, we need to talk about us, about what happens now. Kwame had been dreading this conversation for weeks. Living together under protection had created a strange intimacy. Not romantic exactly, but something deeper. They'd survived trauma together, testified together, rebuilt their understanding of each other from the ground up. But that didn't mean they belonged together. What do you want to happen? He asked. I want to say I still love you, that everything we've been through has made me realize you're the one, that I was stupid to ever leave you, that we should try again. She smiled sadly. That's what happens in movies, right? The woman realizes her mistake. The man forgives her. They live happily ever after. But this isn't a movie. No, it's not. Akosua turned to face him fully. The truth is, Kwame, I don't know if I love you or if I'm just grateful to you. I don't know if you're protecting me out of old feelings or just because you're a good person. And I don't know if we could ever build something real on the foundation of everything that's happened. Kwame felt relief wash over him. Relief that she'd said what he'd been thinking but couldn't articulate. I spent 3 years proving I was worthy of you, proving that the man you left wasn't worthless. And I did prove it. But somewhere along the way, I realized I wasn't proving it to you anymore. I was proving it to myself. So where does that leave us? Honestly, I think it leaves us as two people who needed each other at a specific moment in time, but who don't belong together long term. He reached out and took her hand, not romantically, but with genuine affection. Akosua, I don't hate you. I don't even resent you anymore. What you did 3 years ago taught me lessons I needed to learn, and protecting you these past months taught me who I want to be. Someone who helps people even when they don't deserve it? Someone who acts according to his values, regardless of whether it's profitable or easy. He squeezed her hand gently. You're going to be fine. Your mother is proud of you for testifying. You expose corruption that nobody else had the courage to challenge? That's worth something. But it doesn't pay bills, Akosua said, echoing her own words from 3 years ago. God, listen to me. Still worried about money after everything. Money matters. You weren't wrong about that. You were just wrong about it being the only thing that matters. Kwame released her hand. I've been thinking about what comes next for both of us. I have a proposal. I'm afraid to ask. Connect Ghana's new owners want to expand into healthcare technology, apps for rural clinics, telemedicine platforms, digital health records. They need someone who understands both technology and healthcare, someone who can bridge those worlds. Akosua's eyes widened. You're offering me a job? I'm recommending you for a job. What you did with it would be up to you. It's good money. Not Richard's stolen millions, but honest salary that can rebuild a life. And it's meaningful work that would actually help people. After everything, you'd still help me get back on my feet? I'm not helping you get back on your feet. I'm giving you an opportunity to stand on your own. There's a difference. He smiled slightly. Besides, you testified against the Cedar Group when you could have run. You threw that flash drive to the crowd when you could have bargained for your own safety. That took courage. Courage should be rewarded. Tears slipped down Akosua's cheeks. I don't deserve you. You're right, you don't. But you don't need to. That's the point. You need to deserve yourself. Become someone you're proud of, regardless of what anyone else thinks. They stood on the balcony in comfortable silence. Two people whose lives had intersected in painful and profound ways, now preparing to diverge again. What about you? Akosua finally asked. What's next for Kwame Asante? I'm starting something new, a foundation focused on protecting whistleblowers and corruption witnesses. Too many people stay silent because they can't afford the consequences of speaking up. I want to change that. Using your remaining money, some of it, and fundraising the rest. Turns out when you expose a multi-billion seedy corruption network, donors line up to support your next project. He laughed. The irony is that losing Connect Ghana might have freed me to do work that actually matters. I was so busy being successful that I forgot to ask whether success meant anything. Richard taught us both expensive lessons. Yes, he did. Kwame's expression darkened slightly. I've been thinking about him a lot lately, about how he had everything, money, status, opportunities, and threw it away because he was never satisfied, always needed more, always needed to prove himself, always needed to win. You're not like him. I could have been. 3 years ago when you left, I was so angry and hurt that I could have become someone bitter and ruthless, someone who measured worth only in status and revenge. But I didn't, and I'm proud of that. His phone buzzed. A text from Grace Okoro, the journalist who'd helped expose the Cedar Group. She'd won multiple awards for her reporting and had launched her independent news platform with Kwame's funding. It was thriving. The text read, "Major development. 2 more Cedar Group members arrested this morning in Accra. The investigation is expanding. You did this, Kwame. You changed Ghana." Kwame showed the message to Akosua, who smiled. You really did change things. One person standing up against a corrupt system? No, many people standing up. You, me, Grace, and Amma, those neighbors in Koforidua who filmed everything, the prosecutors who risked their careers, the judges who didn't take bribes. Change is never one person. It's everyone who refuses to stay silent. A knock at the door interrupted them. Ifua, Akosua's mother, entered with breakfast. She'd been living with them in Lagos, cooking and keeping house while they testified and recovered. She'd become something of a mother figure to Kwame as well, the family he'd lost when his own mother died. Eat, she commanded, setting plates on the table. You both look too thin. All this stress and testimony. Nobody eating properly. They gathered around the small dining table, 3 people who'd been thrown together by crisis and who'd somehow become a family of sorts. As they ate, Efwa talked about her plans. She wanted to return to Ghana and open a small restaurant in Koforidua, using recipes she'd perfected over decades of cooking. I'll need a loan, she said, looking at Kwame. Small one. I'll pay you back with interest. Consider it an investment, not a loan. I'll be a silent partner. You run everything. Keep all the profits after we're even. Why would you do that? Because good food brings people together, Mama Fua. And Ghana needs more places where people come together honestly, not to scheme or corrupt, but just to eat and talk and be human. He smiled. Besides, your groundnut soup is the best I've ever tasted. I'm investing in excellence. After breakfast, as Afua cleaned up, Kwame and Akosua returned to the balcony. The morning sun was higher now, turning the ocean golden. When do you think we can safely return to Ghana? Akosua asked. The ambassador says maybe another month, long enough for the trials to progress, for security to stabilize, for public attention to shift elsewhere. Kwame paused. Will you be okay? Going back alone? I won't be alone. I'll have Mama and hopefully this new job you're recommending me for. And Kwame? She looked at him seriously. I'll have the memory of what you did for me. That's worth more than you know. Understanding that someone cared enough to risk everything, even when I didn't deserve it. Everyone deserves help when they're drowning, even people who pushed others underwater first. They stood together on the balcony, two people whose love story had ended, but whose human story would continue, separately, but forever connected by the trials they'd survived. 1 month later, Kwame stood in Kotoka International Airport in Accra, watching Akosua and her mother walk toward their departure gate. They were flying to Nairobi. Akosua had accepted the position with Connect Ghana's healthcare division, which was headquartered in Kenya. A fresh start in a new country, away from the ghosts of Ghana. She turned back one last time, caught his eye across the crowded terminal, and raised her hand in goodbye. Not a wave, too casual. Not a blown kiss, too romantic. Just an acknowledgement that their time together was ending. Kwame raised his hand in return, and then she was gone, disappearing into the security line with her mother beside her. He stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of the past year settle and then lift. She'd come into his life as his first love and greatest heartbreak. She'd returned as a victim needing rescue, and she was leaving as, what? Not an enemy, not a lover. Perhaps just another person doing her best to survive and grow in a complicated world. His phone buzzed. A message from his lawyer. The foundation paperwork is complete. You're officially operational. First case already waiting. A bank employee who wants to expose fraud but can't afford to lose his job. Sound familiar? Kwame smiled and typed back. Send me the details. Let's make sure he doesn't have to choose between doing right and surviving. As he walked out of the airport into Accra's humid afternoon, Kwame felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness exactly, not contentment, but peace with the choices he'd made and the person he'd become. His phone rang. Aunt Amma. Kwame, my son, when are you coming to visit? I've finished setting up my new house in Kumasi. It's beautiful. Much better than that compound. No bad memories here. I'll come this weekend, Auntie, I promise. Good, and bring a nice girl with you. Time to stop being alone. Kwame laughed. Auntie, I just spent 6 months protecting my ex-girlfriend from criminals. I think I need a break from women. Nonsense, the right woman wouldn't be drama. She'd be peace, you'll see. After hanging up, Kwame drove through Accra's traffic toward his temporary residence in Airport City. He'd sold his mansion in Tresako. Too many memories, too much house for one person. Now he lived in a modest 3-bedroom apartment, saving his money for the foundation's work, rather than impressing others with wealth. As he drove past Makola Market, the same market where he'd once sold phones from a wooden table, Kwame thought about the journey from there to here, from nothing to millions, from heartbreak to healing, from victim to victor, to something more complicated than either word could capture. He'd learned that revenge was empty, that justice was complex, that doing the right thing often cost more than you wanted to pay, but was worth it anyway. He'd learned that the woman who'd broken his heart wasn't a villain, just a flawed human who'd made mistakes, like everyone, including himself. He'd learned that wealth without character was hollow, but character without resources was vulnerable. You needed both to survive and thrive. Most importantly, he'd learned that the unthinkable thing he'd done, helping the woman who'd abandoned him, wasn't weakness or foolishness. It was strength. It was choosing who he wanted to be, rather than letting circumstances or anger choose for him. That evening, Kwame sat in his apartment office, reviewing applications for the foundation's assistance, stories of people who'd witnessed corruption but couldn't afford to speak up, people who wanted to do right but feared the consequences, people like he'd once been, powerless and afraid. Now he had power, and he would use it to make sure others didn't have to choose between integrity and survival. His phone buzzed one last time, a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Asante, you don't know me, but I worked at the same bank as Richard. I have evidence of more corruption, but I'm afraid to come forward. Your foundation? Is it real? Can you really protect people like me?" Kwame typed back carefully. "Yes, the protection is real. Call this number tomorrow and we'll discuss how to keep you safe while exposing the truth. You're not alone anymore." He hit send and leaned back in his chair, looking around his modest apartment, so different from the penthouse he'd once owned, the mansion he'd sold, the poverty he'd escaped. This was enough. This was right. Outside his window, across lights twinkled in the darkness. Millions of people hustling, surviving, trying to build better lives in a country still struggling with corruption, but slowly, painfully changing. Kwame Asante, the phone seller who'd become a millionaire, who'd lost the woman he loved and then saved her anyway, who'd fought a corrupt system and won at great personal cost, he sat in the gathering darkness and smiled. Not because his story had a Hollywood ending, not because he'd gotten revenge or found perfect love or achieved unambiguous victory, but because he'd done something rare and precious. He'd chosen the kind of man he wanted to be, and he'd lived according to that choice, regardless of the cost. Somewhere in Nairobi, Akosha was starting a new life. Somewhere in Kirikiri prison, the Cedar Group members were beginning long sentences. Somewhere in Ghana's banks and ministries, a few people were thinking twice before stealing, having seen what happened to Richard and his co-conspirators. And in a modest apartment in Accra, one man who'd been left behind when he was poor sat surrounded by purpose and peace, ready to help others who faced similar choices between safety and integrity. The woman who'd left him when he had nothing would never know that her betrayal had ultimately created something beautiful. A man who'd learned that being rich meant nothing compared to being righteous, and that the most unthinkable thing you could do wasn't revenge or bitterness, but grace. Kwame picked up his phone and recorded a voice message for his foundation's website, a message for everyone who felt powerless against corruption. "My name is Kwame Asante. 3 years ago, I had nothing. No money, no power, no way to fight injustice. Today I have resources, and I'm using them to make sure that doing the right thing doesn't mean losing everything. If you've witnessed corruption and you're afraid to speak up, call us. If you've been betrayed and manipulated and used, reach out. If you're drowning and everyone else has walked away, we're still here. Because in Ghana, in Africa, in this world, we rise together or we drown alone. And I choose rising." He posted the message and sat back, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of purpose. Outside, Accra continued its eternal rhythm. Hustle and hope, corruption and courage, betrayal and redemption all mixed together in the beautiful, complicated, frustrating, inspiring mess of West African life. And in that mess, one man who'd been broken and rebuilt himself was now helping others do the same. That was the real unthinkable thing. Not revenge, not forgiveness, not even justice. Just one person choosing to be better than their circumstances and using that choice to lift others. That was enough. That was everything. That was the point of the entire painful, beautiful story.